In the kingdom of Justicia, a land where a revered saint is born once every century, her very existence is treasured as the ultimate symbol of the nation. Legends claim that these holy figures possessed prayers capable of healing the sick, striking fear into demons, and bringing absolute peace to the world. This reverence permeates the royal capital, or at least that is the story told to the masses. Amidst the bustling streets, a knight and a young girl walk alongside commoners, blending into a scene of idyllic daily life. Desperation grips a family inside a cathedral as they beg the Lady Saintess to save their son, whose fever has raged for 3 days despite medical intervention. Comforting the exhausted mother, the Saintess assures her that the ordeal is over and acknowledges the hardship she has endured. With a serene smile, the Saintess declares that the Lord never abandons those with a future, offering a prayer for the suffering child. Invoking the light of salvation, she grants healing to the weak, causing the feverish boy to suddenly wake up in his mother's arms. The crowd erupts in praise for the beautiful Saintess as the hope of the land, while she accepts their gratitude with a practiced smile. Moments later in her private carriage, the facade drops completely as she slumps over in exhaustion, though the public still believes she is the most beautiful woman in the world. Her exclusive knight, Roland Alder, immediately chides her for letting her guard down and demands she fix her posture. Dismissing his warnings about being the kingdom's symbol, she argues that her duties are done for the day, though Roland warns she will be scolded for being unsaint-like. Resigning herself to his lecturing, she admits that maintaining appearances is exhausting and she can only truly relax when she is with her childhood friend, Roland. The two share a quiet dinner, enjoying a rare moment of privacy away from the pressures of the court. She happily digs into the meal, praising Roland's cooking as the best while savoring the reprieve from her public persona. Roland coldly remarks that flattery won't get her anything, causing the Saintess to look up in sudden confusion at his sharp tone. Turning serious, she confesses that she couldn't continue being a saintess without him by her side. She reflects on how she was just a village girl who became a saint out of nowhere, but Roland skeptically asks if she isn't exaggerating. Recalling her past, she notes that she awakened the mark as a child and was overwhelmed when brought to the capital at 10, initially wanting to quit and go home. Despite the heavy duty and responsibility, she endured the life because Roland promised to protect her as her appointed knight. The memory fades into a bright morning as Roland opens the curtains to wake the Lady Saintess for the new day. Buried under her blankets, she groans and refuses to get up, wishing to sleep a little longer. Roland ruthlessly pulls the covers off, ignoring her complaints that he is being rougher than usual with his family. Seeing him dressed in his formal uniform, she is confused until he reminds her that today is her monthly audience with His Majesty. Realization strikes her like a lightning bolt as she gasps, having completely forgotten the appointment. Inside the palace, the king demands a progress report as Saintess Freemia arrives, internally screaming about her forgetfulness while trying to hide her nervousness. She bows respectfully before the throne, offering a polite, "Yes, Your Majesty," to conceal her earlier panic. As soon as they exit the grand doors, the Saintess lets out a massive sigh of relief, slumping as the tension leaves her body. Roland immediately pesters her to wake up earlier next time, but she counters that at least she wasn't actually late. She playfully insists that his voice is her necessary alarm clock, while he dryly retorts that he isn't a rooster and she should wake up on her own. Roland cautions the Saintess that although they are out of sight, they are still inside the castle and cannot relax just yet. Once they turn the corner, both the knight and the Saintess let out a synchronized sigh of relief, dropping their formal masks. Roland promises to make her something sweet when they return, acknowledging that her meeting with the king was exhausting and she is clearly tired. Eager to escape the stifling atmosphere, Freemia excitedly promises to hang in there a little longer so they can hurry home. Their escape is suddenly interrupted by a voice asking if they are leaving so soon, stopping them in their tracks. The princess appears with a sneer, mocking Freemia for being a country bumpkin who still cannot adjust to castle life. Turning her attention to Roland, the princess pities him for his tough job and suggests he ask to be replaced to avoid dealing with Freemia. Roland firmly rejects her offer, stating that he chose to become the Lady Saintess's knight despite the princess's strange taste in insults. Narratively, saints are usually chosen from the royal bloodline, but Freemia is a rare exception born to commoners, interrupting the cycle. An older noble named Lord Alfred intervenes, remarking that educating the country's saint is simply his duty. When Alfred makes an insulting comment, Roland bristles with anger, but Freemia calms him down, grateful that he got angry for her sake. As the pair walks away, Lord Alfred watches Freemia with a cold, calculating gaze, muttering her name. Suddenly, a new figure approaches from the garden, announcing that he has finally found them. Freemia recognizes the newcomer as Lord Julius Scheherazade, the first prince. Julius warmly embraces his sister Yulia and asks Freemia if she planned to leave without seeing her fiancé. The princess seethes internally, hating that her beloved brother is engaged to a village girl due to the king's decree. Julius invites Freemia out for a meal next time to reward her hard work, and she accepts with honor. Julius thanks Roland for protecting her, leaving the knight to think that the prince's kindness makes him impossible to dislike. Promising to contact her once the date is set, Julius waves goodbye until next time. With the royals finally gone, Roland and Freemia slump in exhaustion and agree to head home immediately. Night falls over the capital, casting long shadows where conspirators gather in secret to plot against the saint. Inside, Lord Alfred and his cohort discuss the prince's modesty and the problematic support the people show the saintess. Declaring it unthinkable to have a country girl as the nation's symbol, they resolve to move forward with their plan immediately. In the city streets, agents spread malicious rumors, confident that the princess trusts them implicitly. Citizens begin to whisper about irregularities, wondering where these troubling rumors began. The gossip spirals out of control, claiming she bosses the guards, her healing is temporary, and she refuses treatment to the poor. These exaggerated lies twist into a single, damning label spread from mouth to mouth: fake Saintess Freemia. The saintess concludes her duties at the church, gently assuring a grateful citizen that they will be fine now thanks to her healing. As the man walks away, Roland watches him with suspicion until the man suddenly stops and turns back with a dark, unreadable expression. The man suddenly explodes into a rage, screaming that she is a filthy liar and a fake, swearing he will never forgive her. Roland steps in to protect the confused saintess, but the man accuses her of giving a fake blessing that caused his son to nearly die instead of recovering. The surrounding crowd begins to murmur in fear, realizing that the rumors about a false saintess trying to take over the kingdom might actually be true. Freemia is overcome with terror as the atmosphere turns hostile, asking herself what she should do as the people turn against her. She stands paralyzed by the collective hatred directed at her, noting with horror that she has never seen people look at her with such intense disdain. Roland firmly interjects, telling Freemia that no matter what anyone else says, he believes in her completely. He turns to the accuser and fiercely defends her, shouting that she is no imposter because she has saved countless lives and served as a beacon of hope. Roland warns the man that by accusing the saintess of being a fraud, he is directly insulting His Majesty, who was the one who chose her. He challenges the man to bring his son to the church to prove the healing failed, but the man violently refuses and tells him to shut up. Later in private, Roland reassures a worried Freemia that the man was almost certainly lying and the rumors are baseless. He explains that the man's inconsistent behavior and refusal to produce the child suggest that the sick boy likely doesn't even exist. Freemia feels a weight lift off her chest but reflects on her naivety, realizing she was foolish to think the rumors would vanish without someone pulling the strings. The next morning, Roland enters her room to find her already awake, noting that she managed to rise before he could come to wake her. With a serious expression, he informs her that a message has arrived from the castle stating that His Majesty wishes to speak with her directly about the rumors. Standing before the king, Freemia firmly denies being a false saintess, citing the mark on her chest as irrefutable proof of her status. Roland backs her up by dismissing the stories as mere rumors, but the king grimly asks if the specific rumor about her being false is true. The king admits it is hard to deny the rumors outright despite his desire to believe in them, leaving the pair in a tense silence. The princess suddenly interrupts the audience, demanding attention as she reveals a mark on her own chest identical to the saintess's. Roland is stunned, arguing that it is impossible for two marks to exist in one era, but the princess smugly retorts that they clearly do. Lord Alfred steps in to claim he recently discovered the princess was under a malicious spell, implying that someone else in the room is the true fraud. He concocts a story that Freemia leached the princess's power while she was cursed, and that the princess's true mark manifested once the spell was broken. The princess sneers that she will expose Freemia as a fraud right now, while Roland mentally notes that their accusations make no sense and lack any real proof. To prove their claim, they bring in the sick man from the church, and the princess challenges Freemia to prove her power by healing his mysterious illness. Standing before the stricken man, Freemia confidently assures the court that the saintess's prayer heals all illnesses, preparing to prove her power. She offers her prayer, but instead of healing, the man convulses and vomits blood, causing the crowd to gasp in horror. The princess immediately steps in, shoving Freemia aside with a smug sneer and declaring her a fake who cannot save anyone. Yulia places her hands on the man, and with a theatrical display of light, he is instantly cured, praising her as the true savior. The king proclaims that the matter is settled, announcing that the true saintess is his own daughter, Yulia Scheherazade. Turning his wrath on Freemia, he strips her of her title and permanently exiles her from the capital, ordering her to leave at once. The king then commands Roland to abandon Freemia and serve Yulia, the rightful saintess, as her new protector. Freemia looks to Roland for support, but he bows his head and grimly accepts the king's order, stating that a knight cannot disobey. Prince Julius arrives and looks down on Freemia with cold fury, declaring that he has never been more ashamed or disappointed. When Freemia tries to speak, he cuts her off sharply, refusing to hear any excuses from the woman who deceived him. He formally nullifies their engagement, and Freemia, having lost everything, quietly accepts that she has no place left here. Freemia walks out of the cathedral alone with her meager belongings, the whispers of the crowd following her. Every hushed conversation sounds like scathing criticism, feeding her paranoia that the entire world is mocking her fall. She tries to comfort herself by thinking she is finally free from the heavy burden of being a saintess, but the freedom feels empty. Her brave face crumbles as tears begin to fall, the reality of her isolation piercing through her attempts at optimism. She realizes that her strength didn't come from her title, but from the person who was always smiling by her side. Overwhelmed by loneliness, she wishes aloud for that person to be there, only to hear a familiar voice call out, "Saintsima." She turns around in disbelief to see Roland standing there, calmly asking if she called for him. Confused, she asks why he is there, and he casually replies that he is late because packing took longer than expected. He declares that he is still the saintess's knight, and that his only goal from the very beginning was to protect her. Roland asks if she will let him stay by her side, and she tearfully asks if he really means it. He confirms his promise with a smile, teasingly asking how she ever planned to survive out in the world without him. Freemia breaks down into a mix of laughter and tears, the weight of her exile lifting as she realizes she isn't truly alone. Roland helps her onto his horse, and together they ride away from the capital, leaving the treacherous court behind. 2 countries east of the kingdom of Justicia lies the small nation of Clarica, a lush region known for its fertile soil and vibrant greenery. The coastal city of Urias sits peacefully by the sea, serving as a quiet sanctuary far removed from the capital's drama. Sunlight floods into a quiet bedroom as the door clicks open, signaling the start of a new day. Roland enters the room and dutifully calls out to the Lady Saintess, urging her to wake up. Buried deep under her blankets, Freemia groans in protest and tries to refuse the morning light. She attempts to negotiate for more sleep, but Roland ruthlessly warns that if she doesn't get up, his delicious breakfast will get cold. Panic seizes her at the thought of missing out on food, and she bolts upright, screaming at him not to eat it all himself. 6 months have passed since leaving the royal capital, and the pair has settled into a humble life together in an old church in this town. They muse on how the church was scheduled for demolition just before they arrived, a stroke of luck that felt like fate itself. Sitting down to eat, Freemia gently reprimands Roland, reminding him that she told him to stop calling her saint. She points out that his bad habit has caused the townsfolk to start using the title, even though she officially quit being a saint. While the locals believe she is unrelated to the capital's saint, Freemia reflects on the surprising revelation that other saints actually exist. Roland wonders what kind of people these other saints are, while Freemia expresses a genuine desire to meet them someday. He enthusiastically vows to welcome them with everything he has, though Freemia privately suspects he just means he will feed them. Freemia sighs that he is still too formal after 7 years together, but she admits that being respected doesn't feel entirely bad. Morning chores complete, Freemia admires how much cleaner the church looks after half a year of their hard work. They recall that the place was buried in disgracefully thick dust when they first arrived, barely fit to be called a house of God. Shifting the topic, Freemia compliments Roland's new black attire, noting how well it contrasts with his old white knight's uniform. Roland blushes at the sudden praise, and Freemia silently squeals over how adorable his embarrassed expression is. Their moment is interrupted by a kindly old woman arriving to greet the Lady Saintess, and Sir Roland with a warm smile. Freemia kneels before the altar, offering a sincere prayer to the Lord to grant healing to the weak. She reflects that helping the townspeople and healing their illnesses by choice has brought her a fulfillment she never imagined. For the first time in her life, she feels that her words and smiles are coming from the heart, making her a true saint. The community has embraced them completely, with children and elders alike finding comfort in their presence. The church stands tall under the bright sky, no longer a ruin but a functioning beacon of hope for the city. With the prayers finished smoothly, Freemia stretches her arms, satisfied with another day well spent. She notices Roland putting on his coat and curiously asks if he is heading out somewhere. He invites her to go shopping, and she excitedly agrees, declaring that staying home alone is boring. As they walk through the cobblestone streets, Roland lists their needs: 3 days of food and tools to repair the deteriorating altar. Freemia asks why he doesn't simply hire someone, but Roland bluntly replies that it is too expensive, so he will fix it himself. Roland suggests she needs exercise since they lack royal support, prompting Freemia to whine that the shop is too far. When Roland asks why she refuses to walk, Freemia shamelessly declares she doesn't need muscles because he will carry her when the time comes. A village woman greets them warmly, thanking the saintess because her prayers have made her feel much better. Roland attempts to pay for their bread, but the woman insists on adding extra items as a token of gratitude. Flustered, Roland tries to refuse the generosity, but the woman smiles and demands he accept it for always looking after them. Walking away, Freemia teases Roland about his stiff formality and asks if he is perhaps bad with older women. She asks if he was popular in the capital, but Roland admits that aside from her, he rarely spoke to women at all. Roland explains that he never had long conversations with anyone else because he was always too busy staying by her side. A baker interrupts their moment, tossing them fresh croquettes and insisting they eat because they are both too skinny. Roland worries that snacking will ruin their dinner, but Freemia cheerfully retorts that she has a separate stomach for treats. Freemia bites into the hot croquette, her face lighting up with pure culinary bliss. She marvels at the freedom of eating while walking, noting that this simple joy feels wonderful compared to the stifling capital. Roland agrees that the journey was long, but seeing her happiness confirms that they have finally reached the perfect home. Freemia admits that she still thinks about the capital sometimes simply because she lived there for so long as a prisoner of duty. They wonder briefly what is happening back there now, but Roland decides it doesn't matter since they are far away. Freemia struggles under the weight of the shopping bags, and Roland gently offers to help despite her stubborn refusal. Meanwhile in the capital, a desperate father begs the guards to let him see the saintess, only to be coldly turned away. The commoners grumble that the church is shut down and they are barred from the castle, leaving them without salvation. One man whispers that the old days were better even if Freemia was fake, as the new fees are impossible for the poor to afford. Inside the palace, Princess Yulia complains that she only saw 5 patients and demands to see more. Lord Alfred feigns concern, warning her not to overwork herself lest she fall ill and worry His Majesty. Privately, Alfred scoffs at her ignorance, noting that the chamber is rigged with a device to mimic the power she lacks. He calculates that the mana-draining device can only be used 5 times a day, so he must prioritize nobles to secure the royal family's influence. Disaster strikes the streets as a mother collapses, coughing up blood while her child screams in terror. A highly contagious, unknown disease sweeps through the royal capital, plunging the city into immediate chaos. Crowds storm the palace gates screaming for the saintess to save them, but the guards hold them back with crossed spears. Trapped in her chamber, Yulia demands to know why she is locked in instead of performing her duty as the saint. Alfred blocks her path, claiming it is for her safety, while internally panicking that the device cannot cure this new plague. The king confronts Alfred, demanding to know why his daughter is forbidden from helping the sick when the city is on the brink of riot. Alfred lies through his teeth, claiming that Yulia's powers have not fully returned and she would only be able to heal a few. He invents a malicious falsehood, stating that he has investigated the cause of her weakened state. Alfred declares that the princess's power is being siphoned by the church in the countryside, tainted by the false saint. With a twisted smile, he advises the king that to save the people, they must immediately demolish Freemia's church to restore the power. In a peaceful memory bathed in light, a young Freemia and a boy sit together amidst a field of blooming clover. The scene shifts to a nightmare as the boy runs desperately through a dark forest, his body battered and his eyes wide with terror. Collapsing against the roots of a massive tree, he gasps that he ran just as they commanded, but his strength has finally failed him. He stares into the uncaring foliage, asking the silence how much longer he must continue this endless, agonizing flight. Crushed by a lifetime of isolation, he whispers that he has been alone long enough and decides he can go no further. Surrendering to his exhaustion, he resolves to stop running and let whatever fate pursues him finally catch up. A sudden warmth pierces the darkness as he hears a girl's fervent prayer asking God to save this big brother. He wakes to see Freemia smiling over him, and in his daze, he asks the girl who healed his wounds if she is an angel. Freemia cheerfully denies being a celestial being, introducing herself simply as a girl with God by her side. When asked for his name, the boy hesitates, starting to say, "I," before ominously correcting himself to "we." In the present, Roland stirs from his sleep, the remnants of the nostalgic dream fading as consciousness returns. Sitting up in bed, he scoffs at the memory of the past, realizing that morning has already arrived. Roland looks out at the church tower, steeling himself to give his absolute best for another day. He knocks on the Lady Saintess's door and, receiving no answer, announces he is coming in. Finding Freemia sleeping peacefully, Roland pauses, thinking that disturbing such a serene face feels almost like a crime. He forces himself to break the spell, calling out that it is morning until Freemia wakes with a startled yelp. Freemia tries to burrow back under the covers since it is their day off, but Roland insists that the day must start with breakfast. She sulks about being left alone again, asking if he is going on that job today while Roland tries to appease her. Roland arrives at the Adventurers Guild, acknowledging that the dangerous work he does here is necessary for their survival. He steps inside the bustling guild hall, the bell on the door announcing his arrival to the rough crowd within. His party members greet him warmly, and Roland apologizes for keeping them waiting. The team consists of Warrior Mash, Mage Luna, and Archer Cecily, all eager to start the day's work. When Mash asks which request to take, Roland immediately points to the board and chooses the one with the highest payout. He smiles softly, thinking that he will do whatever it takes to ensure the Lady Saintess never has to go without. His female party members exchange knowing glances, seeing right through his dedication to the girl back home. They tease him for being as loyal as a lovesick maiden, causing Roland to flush with embarrassment. Mash wraps an arm around him, laughing that he became an adventurer solely for her sake, which Roland cannot deny. The group shares a laugh at his expense, noting that their assessment of his devotion isn't far off the mark. Roland internally renews his dark vow to protect her at any cost, even if she one day comes to hate him for it. Back at the church, Freemia sits alone and puffs her cheeks, loudly declaring that she is bored. Freemia sits alone in the quiet church, the vast space amplifying her loneliness now that Roland is gone. She stares at the clock in despair, realizing she still has to endure 8 agonizing hours until he returns. Unable to handle the boredom, she jumps up and decides there is only one viable solution to her problem. She dives back into her bed with pure joy, declaring that it is time for a second nap. Freemia convinces herself this is a genius plan to make time fly, though she briefly worries about waking up for lunch. She wakes up groggy and terrified, realizing she slept straight through her alarm and missed the noon mark. A dilemma arises as she realizes eating lunch now will ruin her appetite for dinner, but wasting Roland's cooking is not an option. Her resolve crumbles instantly when she opens the basket, the delicious sandwich proving impossible to resist. A vision of an angry Roland strikes fear into her heart, reminding her that he has zero tolerance for laziness. She concocts a brilliant scheme to exercise after eating, reasoning that burning calories will make her hungry again for dinner. With her conscience clear, she digs into the meal, praising the delicious flavor with every bite. Attempting to mimic Roland's training, she gets into position on the floor to perform some sit-ups. She strains and grunts with maximum effort, but her body refuses to lift even an inch off the ground. Collapsing back onto the rug, she stares at the ceiling in genuine shock at her own lack of physical strength. She realizes Roland makes it look easy, her admiration for him growing as she accepts she cannot match him. Freemia wonders why such an incredible knight dedicates his entire life to serving a simple village girl like her. Time skips mercilessly forward, and she wakes up to hear Roland announcing his return at 6 p.m. Roland cheerfully offers to make dinner immediately, while Freemia panics internally because she is still completely full. He reveals he bought special ingredients for a feast, unaware that Freemia is frantically trying to figure out how to escape eating. Desperate to buy time, she insists on helping him cook, hoping the delay will allow her stomach to settle. Roland immediately notices her bedhead and suspicious behavior, realizing something is off about her sudden helpfulness. He ruthlessly deduces her entire day, guessing she ate late, napped out of boredom, and overslept. Freemia is stunned by his detective skills, noting he would have been 100% accurate if he knew about the failed exercise. She tries to deflect, but Roland smiles with terrifying intensity and asks if she really slept the whole day. Cornered, she tries to play the sympathy card, claiming she only acted out because she was lonely without him. Roland stares at her with cold eyes, flatly stating that loneliness is no excuse for her sloth. Freemia freezes in terror, realizing her cute act has completely failed to soften his heart. Roland sighs deeply as he walks away, resigning himself to the fact that his saintess is truly hopeless. Roland stands before the quest board with his party, scanning for a job that pays well enough to support his saintess. Deep in the forest, Luna suddenly stops, her senses tingling as she alerts the group to a hostile presence at 9 o'clock. She confirms the target has noticed them and is charging straight in, prompting Roland to demand a status report. Mash draws his massive sword as Luna calls out the distance, and Roland instantly orders the group into their standard combat formation. The party holds their ground as the heavy footsteps thunder closer, Luna counting down the meters until impact. A massive grow bear bursts through the trees, its sheer size forcing Roland to admit it is bigger than he anticipated. Mash steps in to tank the blow, gritting his teeth as the beast's speed nearly overwhelms his defense. Luna seizes the opening to cast a binding spell, locking the beast in place while Cecily draws her bowstring taut. With deadly precision, Cecily looses an arrow that strikes the beast's eye, creating the perfect opening for the vanguard. Roland dashes forward with his blade drawn, capitalizing on his team's setup to deliver the finishing blow. He slashes through the beast in a single fluid motion, whispering a quiet apology to the creature as its life fades. Silence returns to the forest as the massive bear slumps to the ground, defeated by their flawless teamwork. Roland thanks his team for the smooth operation and heads off to report, while Mash grins about another job well done. Cecily wonders why a grow bear was so close to the highway, and Roland muses that he wishes they could have just driven it back. He suggests it was likely prepping for winter hibernation, but Cecily reminds him that the quest was strictly for elimination. She points out that for a hardened adventurer, Roland has a surprisingly soft spot for monsters. Leaning in with a sly grin, she teases that the only thing he is truly soft on is the girl waiting for him at home. Roland flushes and tries to deflect, but Cecily ruthlessly presses him to explain exactly what he likes about Freemia. He stammers that his devotion isn't based on shallow attraction, while the girls eagerly speculate if it's her face or her kindness. Cecily interrupts his denial, declaring that falling in love is never shallow and he should just own up to it. Roland turns beet red as the girls exchange knowing glances, agreeing that his feelings are painfully obvious to everyone but him. Cecily notes that Roland used to have a wall up, but he has finally started to open up to his teammates. She steers the conversation back to the main topic, demanding to know how he handles the feelings directed at him. Cornered and defeated, Roland looks away and quietly admits that he loves everything about her. The girls gasp in delight, Cecily declaring that this kind of juicy love talk is fuel for a maiden's soul. Roland realizes he has made a tactical error and tries to escape, but the girls block his path and demand more details. Just as his doom seems certain, Mash returns with the reward money, unwittingly providing the perfect distraction. Roland seizes the chance and bolts out the door, shouting that the Lady Saintess is waiting for him. Cecily screams in frustration at the escape, turning her fury on the confused Mash for ruining the moment. The next morning, peace is restored as Roland stands by Freemia's side, ready to face a new day together. Roland gently wakes the Lady Saintess, announcing that morning has arrived. Freemia shivers violently under her blankets, complaining that today feels unnaturally colder than usual. Roland pulls back the curtains, telling her that a single look outside will explain the chill. Freemia gasps in awe as she sees the entire town blanketed in a thick layer of pristine white snow. Despite the freezing temperature, Freemia excitedly decides they must go out and walk through the snow. Roland helps her put on her boots, amused by her childish curiosity about the weather. Dressed warmly for the elements, the pair steps out to begin their winter adventure. Roland tries to bundle her up further, but Freemia insists she doesn't need it because saints cannot catch colds. She explains that the saint's blessing protects her from all illnesses, poisons, and miasmas. Roland claims his trained body makes him immune too, but Freemia argues she should be the one worried about him. He smiles and says he has nothing to fear with her by his side, though Freemia warns that even strong bodies fall ill. Freemia blushes as she realizes Roland just admitted he relies on her, her heart fluttering at his words. She playfully asks if he will catch her if she slips, happy that he lets her say whatever she wants. Their romantic mood is dampened when they notice the town square is ominously empty. Freemia wonders if the snow caused the closures, noting that it wasn't this deserted last time. Roland stops a passing local to ask what has happened to the bustling town. The man explains that a nasty flu is going around, with symptoms like a harsher version of a cold. He reveals the epidemic is especially contagious and fatal to the weak, keeping everyone indoors. Roland looks at Freemia and nods, instantly understanding what she wants to do without her saying a word. Freemia is surprised he knows her mind so well before she even spoke a request. Beaming with pride at her intuitive knight, she declares that they should get to work immediately. They throw open the church doors, ready to receive the sick and save the town. Roland confirms that everyone has been gathered, while the townspeople whisper in disbelief that they can actually receive treatment here. Freemia smiles warmly and assures them they will be safe, declaring that it is now her turn to give back to the town. She brings her hands together in a solemn prayer, whispering a quiet "Amen" to begin the miracle. Vowing to save everyone in the town, she invokes the light of salvation to wash over the suffering. A brilliant light floods the church and instantly cures the sick, causing the crowd to erupt in tears of relief and gratitude. Roland looks on with pride as the light fades, leaving Freemia glowing with the satisfaction of a job well done. The divine energy dissipates into the air, promising to bring vitality back to the town along with the people's health. Roland notes that the entire town knows her identity now, but Freemia accepts that she cannot change who she is. She beams at him, stating that seeing everyone smile again is the greatest reward she could ever receive. The mood shifts as a heavy downpour suddenly lashes against the church, drowning out the silence. Roland predicts the rain won't stop soon, making Freemia worry that the bad weather will keep patients away. Roland shrugs that it is hard to say, reasoning that only those with life-threatening issues would travel in this storm. He suggests they take advantage of the quiet to relax together, satisfied that their supplies will last a while. Freemia stubbornly refuses to sit, insisting on standing watch just in case someone braves the rain to find her. Just then, the door creaks open and a young boy in a raincoat steps inside, calling out to teacher and the saintess. Roland greets the boy cheerfully, asking if he really walked all the way here alone in such heavy rain. He whispers to Freemia that the boy doesn't look sick or serious, just thoroughly soaked from the journey. The boy nervously clutches his clothes and announces he has a request, prompting Roland to ask what brings him here. Freemia leans down with a gentle expression, encouraging the little one to speak his mind. The boy desperately shouts for her to stop the rain, leaving Freemia stunned by a request that is completely beyond her power. The boy excitedly opens a picture book, urging them to look at the illustration of a starry night. Roland identifies the phenomenon as a meteor shower visible tonight, while Freemia gasps at the beauty of the shooting stars. The boy explains that countless stars fall during the snowy season, recounting a promise he made to watch them with his mother. He reveals he must move away in spring, making this his final chance to join the townspeople in praying to the stars for happiness. Glancing outside at the relentless downpour, the boy realizes with despair that the rain shows no sign of stopping. Desperate to keep his promise, he begs Freemia to use her power to stop the rain. Freemia looks at the boy's earnest face, deeply moved by the purity of his straightforward wish. Internally, she agonizes over her inability to control the weather, knowing her blessings are limited to healing sickness and injury. She clenches her hands in frustration, torn between her desire to help the child and the reality of her limitations. With a heavy heart, Freemia apologizes and admits that stopping the rain is impossible even for a saint. The boy's face falls as he recalls the insults about a fake saint, while Freemia flinches at the unsaid accusation. Roland suddenly interjects with a confident smile, assuring the boy that the saintess will definitely find a way to grant his wish. Reassured by the knight's certainty, the boy wipes his tears and agrees to head home to his waiting parents. As soon as the door closes, Freemia frantically confronts Roland, whispering that she absolutely cannot stop the rain. Roland suggests they could try to recreate the stars artificially, but acknowledges that her true desire is to grant the boy's specific wish. He calmly advises her to simply pray as she always does, suggesting that her sincerity might just clear the skies. Roland declares that he believes in her strength, asserting that her power to help others extends far beyond mere physical healing. He smiles warmly, telling a skeptical Freemia that her prayer will surely be heard because her wish is pure. Encouraged by his unwavering faith, Freemia decides to trust him and asks God to stop the rain, despite her doubts. Freemia clasps her hands in desperate prayer, begging the heavens to grant a sky full of stars for the sake of the boy's precious memories. Outside the door, Roland grimly realizes that in a remote town like this, a failure to produce a miracle could spark rumors that would destroy the saintess's reputation. He walks into the pouring rain to find a secluded location, determined to erase even the smallest seed of worry from her path. Recalling his sworn vow to protect her, Roland declares that the power he wields is simply an extension of the saintess's own strength. Unleashing his suppressed mana, he casts a massive lightning spell into the sky, struggling to control the diluted but overwhelming power. Inside the church, Freemia continues to pray fervently, unaware of the magic as she begs the falling stars to carry her wish to the heavens. She closes her eyes and makes one final plea to the Lord, asking him to hear the pure wish of the young brother. A blinding silence descends upon the world as the magic takes hold, severing the storm clouds in an instant. Freemia's eyes snap open as the sound of rain abruptly ceases, replaced by a stunned stillness that fills the church. Roland stumbles back into the church completely soaked, collapsing against the wall with a heavy thud as exhaustion overtakes him. He smiles weakly and lies that he just went out to check the weather, claiming the clear sky is proof that her prayer was heard. The dark clouds dissolve completely, revealing a breathtaking canvas of infinite stars twinkling in the night sky. Freemia and Roland gaze up at the statue of the saint, agreeing that the sudden flash of light felt like a genuine miracle. Outside, the little boy points to the sky in pure delight, thrilled that his wish has been granted just as he hoped. He stares in awe at the breathtaking view, vowing to never forget this moment for the rest of his life. As the meteor shower begins, Freemia panics and realizes she was so overwhelmed by the sight that she completely forgot to make a wish. Roland asks if she had a specific wish in mind, prompting Freemia to turn the question back on him. Roland gently replies that he has no need for wishes because his desires are already being granted every single day. Freemia blushes at his words, her smile blooming like a flower as she basks in the warmth of his devotion. Far away, a mysterious figure senses the discharge of magic, recognizing the specific mana signature as Wakasimus. Freemia stares out at the relentless downpour, sighing deeply as the gray sky dampens her spirits for yet another day. Boredom nearly crushes her until a faint scratching sound at the door interrupts Roland's suggestion of an early lunch. A soaking wet black cat sits on the threshold, staring up at them with piercing, intelligent eyes. Panic sets in as Freemia realizes the creature is drenched, and she immediately orders Roland to fetch a towel. She gently wraps the shivering animal in the dry cloth, rubbing its fur vigorously to chase away the chill. Freemia squeals over the creature's cuteness, asking if it is a stray while Roland observes its sleek coat. Her plea to keep it is instantly shot down when Roland points out the collar, proving it belongs to someone else. Freemia admits she was blinded by its charm, while the cat lets out a perfectly timed meow to manipulate her further. She beams a dazzling smile at Roland, convincing him to let the cat stay at least until the rain stops. Gazing into the cat's eyes, she whispers a promise to keep it safe, completely smitten by her new temporary friend. Freemia plays happily with the cat using a feather, failing to notice Roland awkwardly averting his gaze in the background. The rain finally clears a few days later, and Roland grimly announces it is time to find the true owner. Freemia hugs the cat tightly, whispering a tearful goodbye now that they have finally bonded. Determined to see it through, she insists on joining the search, arguing that the owner must be worried sick. They scour the town together, though Freemia tries to hide her exhaustion as they trek up and down the steep streets. They show the cat to an old woman passing by, but she shakes her head and says she has never seen it before. Every person they ask coos over the cat's cuteness, but not a single soul recognizes the animal or its collar. Exhaustion turns to frustration as Freemia cries out that they cannot seem to find a single lead anywhere. A dark thought crosses her mind that the cat might have been abandoned, a theory Roland silently agrees is likely. Roland suggests finding the cat a new home since the owner is gone, leaving Freemia stunned by the implication. She stares at him with suspicion, slowly piecing together his strange behavior over the last few days. Freemia accuses him of hating cats because he hasn't touched it once, noting how he has been avoiding them. Roland blushes and stammers a denial, realizing she has cornered him into accepting her next request. Seizing the advantage, she begs him to let them keep the cat at the church, declaring she would be so happy. Roland crumbles under her pleading gaze and agrees, prompting Freemia to declare they need a name immediately. They stare at the black cat in deep contemplation, struggling to come up with a name worthy of its charm. Roland suddenly suggests Cheshire, the name rolling off his tongue as if divinely inspired. The cat meows loudly and raises a paw, seemingly giving its official stamp of approval to the choice. Freemia beams with delight, formally welcoming Cheshire as the newest member of their little family. That night, while Freemia sleeps peacefully, Cheshire sits up and stares into the darkness with glowing, supernatural eyes. Roland sits Cheshire down in the dimly lit room, demanding an explanation for her sudden appearance. The black cat vanishes in a puff of smoke to reveal a young woman, who cheerfully greets her long-lost young master. Unable to contain her excitement, Cheshire launches herself at him with a tearful cry, overwhelmed by the reunion. She clings to him desperately, wailing that she searched everywhere and felt so lonely she thought she would die. Roland gently peels her off, though Cheshire continues to sob that she never stopped believing he was alive. She explains that she finally caught a faint trace of his mana and followed it all the way here to find him. Wiping her tears, she beams with pure joy, declaring how glad she is that she never gave up the search. Roland realizes with a heavy heart that she spent over 10 years wandering alone just to see him again. He pats her head affectionately, thanking her for her loyalty and causing her to melt into a happy puddle. Cheshire pouts that his decision to hide his identity hurt her feelings, forcing Roland to apologize for the distance. When asked about his past decade, Roland admits he didn't want the Saintess to discover too much about his true nature. He acknowledges that Cheshire has been through a lot, but she quickly dismisses her own hardships. Cheshire fiercely vows to protect the Saintess as well, declaring the girl her benefactor for saving Roland's life. Roland accepts her help with a smile, admitting that it will be reassuring to have her guarding Freemia when he is away. Cheshire teases him about the Saintess's obvious affection, leaving Roland flustered as he tries to deny the romantic tension. The flashback ends as Roland heads out for work, sternly warning Freemia not to nap all day. Freemia waves him off confidently, assuring him that she is fine now that she has Cheshire to keep her company. As soon as the door closes, Freemia turns to the cat and asks where she thinks Roland actually went. Cheshire stays silent to protect his secret, knowing her job is simply to guard the Saintess and the house. An hour later, Freemia is already bored out of her mind and begins to treat Cheshire like a toy to pass the time. Cheshire tries to resist the humiliation, but Freemia decides the only cure for her boredom is to go visit Roland. Panic sets in for the cat as she tries to stop the girl, knowing her master explicitly ordered her to guard the church. Freemia completely misinterprets the cat's desperate warnings as excitement, happily deciding to take Cheshire along. The cat blocks her path with a fierce hiss, determined not to let the Saintess wander into danger. Freemia scoops up the protesting cat with a smile, oblivious to Cheshire's internal screaming that her resistance is useless. As they walk through town, neighbors greet the pair warmly and offer gifts, slowing their progress to the guild. Cheshire observes the interactions from Freemia's arms, realizing just how much the townspeople love her master and the Saintess. They finally reach the edge of the district, but Freemia pauses as she realizes the guild is much farther than she anticipated. Her confidence evaporates instantly when she admits to the cat that she actually has no idea where the guild is. Freemia tries to retreat, but her lack of direction strikes again as she realizes she doesn't know the way back either. Panic rises as the sun begins to set, leaving the Saintess and her cat completely stranded in the unknown streets. They wander aimlessly until they are hopelessly lost on a desolate road, the silence amplifying Freemia's anxiety. Freemia trembles with guilt, realizing her reckless behavior is going to cause Roland to worry about them. On the verge of tears, she hugs the cat tight and whispers Roland's name, wishing for him to appear. A familiar voice suddenly answers her call, and she looks up to see Roland standing there with a relieved expression. He explains that a villager mentioned seeing her, though Freemia feels terrible for causing him so much trouble. Roland gently places his coat over her shoulders, promising to hear her reasons later as he guides them home. Freemia beams with gratitude, safe in his presence once again as they walk back to the church together. As they return, Cheshire looks up at the church tower and praises her master's incredible intuition. Inside, the relief turns to discipline as Roland sits them both down for a long, stern lecture about safety. Freemia hangs her head in shame while Roland scolds her, but the cat knows she is next in line for the sermon. Cheshire apologizes for failing as a guard, but Roland forgives her with a knowing smile, warning that her life with the Saintess will be full of trouble. Freemia gazes out at the front of the church, wondering aloud how many visitors might come today, only to be interrupted by a sudden arrival. A cloaked figure steps into the doorway and politely asks if this is the church where the saint lives, causing Cheshire to bristle with suspicion. Freemia freezes as she recognizes the voice, her shock turning to disbelief as she whispers the name, Julia-sama. The hood is pulled back to reveal Prince Julius, who acknowledges Roland's presence and admits that rumors of their location reached him. Roland steps forward to confirm he is her dedicated guard, while Julius turns his gaze to Freemia with a solemn expression. The prince bows his head in deep regret, apologizing immediately and admitting that they were gravely mistaken about her. He confesses that he now knows she was never a fake, stating that he came all this way specifically to apologize. Julius invites them to a guest room to explain the truth, revealing that everything that happened was Count Alfred's scheme. He explains that the Count manipulated Princess Yulia to grasp power, deceiving everyone in the process to hide her lack of ability. Julius recounts how a mysterious contagious disease swept through the capital right before autumn, plunging the city into crisis. As the death toll climbed daily, the Count unnaturally prevented Yulia from healing the sick, claiming there was no cure. The tragic outcome was inevitable, Julius admits, because the devastating truth was that Yulia was the fake saint all along. He explains that the Count disappeared and Yulia lost the public's trust, while the king was crushed by guilt and fell ill. Julius reveals his true purpose, asking Freemia if she will use her power to save the dying people in the capital. He humbly begs her to lend her strength not for the royal family, but for the innocent citizens who are suffering with no one else to turn to. Roland smiles gently and tells Freemia the choice is hers, promising to follow whatever decision she makes. Freemia admits the betrayal still aches and she dreads facing those memories, but she knows she cannot ignore the suffering. She agrees to cooperate as a former saint to save the people, but firmly states she will return home the moment the job is done. They arrive in the capital to find the once lively streets completely deserted and ruined, a shadow of its former glory. Freemia gasps in horror as she looks up to see that the magnificent cathedral has been completely destroyed. Roland observes the ruin calmly, noting that the symbol of the faith was wiped away quite easily. Freemia steels herself, declaring that there is no reason for her to stay in this country and that this destruction feels like a necessary cleansing. She turns to Roland and asks him how he feels seeing the place where he lived for so long reduced to this state. Roland smiles with uncharacteristic detachment, admitting that he honestly doesn't feel anything at all. He gazes at her with total devotion, declaring that the place doesn't matter to him because her presence is the only thing that counts. Freemia blushes and looks away, her heart skipping a beat at his unwavering loyalty amidst the ruins. Inside the castle, Julius announces his return to the bedridden king, who looks up to see Freemia standing there. The king stares at her in wonder, murmuring that she looks like a completely different person than the girl he exiled. He tries to apologize, but Julius warns him not to push himself, revealing that Freemia's mere presence has already brought some relief. The king tearfully begs for her help, admitting that while his apology cannot change the betrayal, the innocent people should not be blamed for his sins. Freemia assures the king that her return is solely to save the people, then immediately instructs Julius to prepare a venue large enough for a massive gathering. At the knight's training grounds, the citizens buzz with disbelief at the saintess's return, while Julius quietly informs her that the king has already passed away. Gazing down at the sea of expectant faces from the balcony, Freemia notes with a heavy heart how fickle the ways of men truly are. She steels herself and declares that she waited for this moment not for praise, but to bring salvation to everyone. Freemia begins her solemn chant, invoking the light of salvation to wash over the suffering capital. A blinding pillar of divine light erupts from the training grounds, sweeping through the streets and healing every sickness in its path. The miracle complete, Freemia walks through the celebrating town with Roland, but her legs finally give out from sheer exhaustion. Roland catches her before she falls, gently scolding her for pushing herself too hard by healing everyone at once. Freemia smiles weakly, admitting she only overdid it because she wanted to finish the job quickly and go home. Roland gazes at her with deep affection, teasingly asking if she expects him to nurse her back to health if she collapses. She thanks him honestly for always staying by her side, and he answers with a tender kiss on her forehead. Roland tucks her into bed, assuring her that a carriage is arranged and they will leave the moment dawn breaks. Stepping out into the hallway, Roland calls for Cheshire, who appears instantly to receive her orders. He entrusts the sleeping saintess to the cat's protection, stating he needs to step out for a short while to finish one last task. Cheshire nods with a serious expression, confirming she knows the escape route and will guard Freemia with her life. In a dark alley, conspirators plot to kill the knight and kidnap the saintess, convinced their plan is foolproof. Roland suddenly steps out of the shadows to confront them, greeting a terrified Count Alfred with a chilling, "Long time no see." Alfred panics and accuses Roland of being a schemer who plans to misuse the Saintess's power for his own gain. Roland draws his sword with a cold glare, declaring he will never allow them to monopolize medical care again. Alfred's fear breaks into a maniacal, unhinged laughter as he realizes the final confrontation has arrived. Dozens of assassins emerge from the darkness to surround the lone knight, mocking his arrogance for coming there alone. Alfred sneers triumphantly, shouting that Roland is destined to become nothing more than prey for the kingdom's hired killers. Count Alfred orders the assassins to kill the knight, but Roland smiles confidently as he prepares to engage the enemy. Roland's gaze sharpens into a deadly focus, his movements accelerating beyond human perception. He blurs into motion, slamming the first assassin against the wall before the man can even register the attack. The remaining assassins panic as Roland vanishes from their sight, leaving them swinging their weapons at empty air. Another body hits the ground with a heavy thud, the gap in skill becoming terrifyingly clear as the squad is dismantled. Roland reappears behind the trembling count, asking why he is so shocked that a single man could wipe out his hired killers. He leans in with a terrifying aura, asking if Alfred has truly forgotten exactly who he is dealing with. Roland declares himself the Saint's exclusive chosen knight and the strongest of the royal guard, rendering their numbers meaningless. Alfred screams in terror and tries to run as Roland charges him, cutting down the last defense standing in his way. Cornered and desperate, Alfred tries to flee while shouting offers for a deal to save his own skin. The Count warns that killing him will bring trouble, but Roland calmly rejects the threat with a simple no. Alfred begs for his life on the ground, but Roland coldly decides he is more trouble alive than dead. Roland delivers the killing blow without hesitation, telling Alfred to beg his god for mercy in the afterlife. The next morning, Freemia prepares to leave but stops to inform Roland about a final report she received. She reveals that despite her prayers, the king passed away last night as his time could not be delayed. Roland asks if she wants to see him one last time, but Freemia declines, stating that they are merely outsiders now. As they attempt to leave the castle, Princess Yulia suddenly appears and demands to know who gave them permission to go. Roland politely explains they already informed Prince Julius, but Yulia trembles with suppressed rage. Yulia explodes, screaming at Freemia and demanding to know why she let her father die if she is the real saint. Roland steps in to defend her, firmly stating that Yulia's accusation is factually incorrect. He explains that while prayer cures illness, the king had reached the end of his natural lifespan before Freemia even arrived. Yulia refuses to listen, blaming Freemia for not coming sooner, though Freemia reminds her who drove the saint away in the first place. The princess insists the illness should have been healed, but Freemia coldly replies that the only saint of this country is Yulia herself. Freemia stares the princess down and states bluntly that the one who let the king die was not her. She finishes her sentence by declaring that the fault lies with the princess, then turns to leave without looking back. As the carriage rolls away from the capital, Freemia bids a final farewell to Justicia, her expression heavy with complex emotions as she leaves the past behind. She admits to sympathizing with the princess but maintains that the girl reaped what she sowed, clarifying that her harsh words were meant sincerely. Freemia declares that drawing a line in the sand was necessary to solidify her resolve to never return to the capital. Anxiously, she asks if her coldness makes her a failed saint, but Roland holds her hand tight and firmly assures her that is not the case at all. Noticing her gaze drifting, Roland asks if something is on her mind, prompting her to mention a scenic view she remembers from their previous journey 6 months ago. Freemia describes the river and forest she longed to see, but Roland dismisses the idea, insisting they must take the shortest route to get home faster. She resigns herself to the rush as the landscape blurs by, telling herself that the memories of that view will have to be enough. A couple of days pass in a blur of travel until Freemia suddenly realizes something is wrong and calls out for him to hold up. Roland maintains a forced smile and tries to push forward, but Freemia yells that he needs to rest too instead of driving nonstop. She realizes that his smiling face is a mask hiding his exhaustion, knowing he intends to push through without a break to get her home. Freemia sighs that his stubbornness is a double-edged sword, noting that he always puts her well-being above his own physical limits. The carriage suddenly jolts over rough terrain, causing Roland to apologize immediately for the bumpy ride on this shortcut. Looking out the window, Freemia remarks that she feels like she has seen this road before and questions if this is truly the faster route. Recognition flashes in her eyes as she accuses him of taking the path they used once before, and Roland smiles, admitting she finally noticed. Roland stops the carriage and confesses that he decided to make a tiny detour despite his earlier claims of rushing. They step out to behold a magnificent view of a waterfall cascading down a sheer cliff face, the spray glittering in the light. The vast sky stretches out above them, framing the breathtaking landscape in a picture of perfect serenity. Roland confirms that this is the specific spot she mentioned wanting to see, admitting he could tell she wanted to visit it again. She blushes and quietly admits that she really did want to see this view one more time. Freemia reflects that while the scenery is beautiful, it is Roland's kindness that truly heals her tired heart just like it did 6 months ago. Roland suggests they rest here for a while, stating that a little detour is good for the soul once in a while. Freemia agrees softly, soaking in the peaceful moment with her knight as the wind blows gently around them. They arrive back at their town a day later than originally planned, the journey finally at its end. Despite the delay, Freemia smiles brightly, feeling completely refreshed and ready to start her new life the next morning.